Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, in the playoff picture, my main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reggie?
This is playoff Reggie.
It's playoff Reggie.
Playoff Reggie, man. I'm different.
And as a matter of fact, from a podcast perspective, nobody's ever seen playoff Reggie before.
Yeah.
Right?
Hell, I've never even seen playoff Reggie. So we're all about to
have. It's been a long time. It's been a long time, right?
but we're here. We are here, man.
We are here. Everybody that is a fan of the Burgundy and Gold is they're prepared. It's been an exciting year. We're going to be heading down to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers, and we'll get to talk to about that in a minute. But based off of our last podcast, Reg, I made a statement about Terry and the history of wide receivers and everything.
You did.
And I said I would follow up on that.
You did.
So before we get into talking about the playoff game.
Hold on. I don't know what you're getting ready to present here, but you should at least remind the people, for those that didn't get a chance to catch the episode, well,
first of all, if you didn't catch it, shame on you. But go ahead,
shame
Rich.
on you. Shame on you. So again, I don't know what you about to pull out of here, what kind of ammo you got, but we were talking about Terry game-winning walk-off touchdown catch against Cowboys last week or last Sunday, as you can see it there on the screen. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see a picture of it. And Deron Bland got mossed by Terry, right, for the game-winning walk-off touchdown catch. And that touchdown catch was Terry's 13th of the season and put him in the record books for the Washington franchise as the single season, let me say it right, single season receiving touchdown reception leader.
Yes.
At 13. It was a record that was at 12 that was previously held by Ricky Sanders, and that has stood since 1988. So that is what, 34 years? 34 years.
36 years. 36 years. Whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. 34. But nonetheless, it's been a record that stood for a long time. And so I make the point that congratulations to Terry, and it's a great achievement. And I love that for Terry.
Right.
But my point to it was I didn't think that 13 for a record of 12 that is still for 30 plus years goes to show the level of poverty that this franchise has had at the wide receiver position, that we've not had anyone in over 30 plus years to catch 12 to 13 plus touchdown receptions in a season. And Ken took a little offense to that. I don't want to say offense, took a exception to that. And Ken thought that I was undermining 13 touchdown receptions. Correct. And he was comparing that to the league and to other receivers. And my point was, this is not about the other receivers. This is about showing that in 30 plus years, we've not had anyone to catch 12 or 13 or more touchdown passes to break a record that has stood forever and ever and ever. So Ken was, because Ken took exception to my point there, he just said that he told the fans that he would go and pull some data. So fans, we're all are about to get some data and hear it for the first time. Let's see what Ken's got.
Well, to go and look at every single receiver and every single team of everybody that's had is taking on a big task. So I kind of broke it down into a few things here. And let me go over some of it. I mean, obviously Terry picked up the 13th touchdown reception, setting the record, but it's also in 17 games, right? Ricky Sanders only did it in 16 games. Without that 17th game, he wouldn't have had it. He'd have stayed tied. The league went to 17 games in 2000 or 2021, and they went from 14 to 16 games, I believe, in 78. So you got to look at how many games there were, right? So what I did is I just randomly chose 60 years, and I didn't look at. I'm going to just say I didn't look at every single team. I was looking at our division initially here. The Giants in 60 years to see if they've had how many players they've had with 13 or more receptions.
Okay.
0. The Giants have never had anybody with 13 touchdown receptions in a year. They've won Super Bowls at different points. They've had years of doing very, very well. Now, they leaned a little bit historically on their defense more than offense, but they've had some good receivers there, right?
Okay. I need you to get to the meat now.
I'm getting to it. Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Dallas Cowboys have had some crazy offenses in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even when Tony Romo was there. They weren't winning, but they were putting up a whole lot of points and a whole lot of yards. You care to guess how many times the Cowboys have had a receiver with 13 or more than 13 receptions? Twice.
Okay.
The Eagles, only one time
in the history of the franchise.
In 60 years, right? So we're going back to 64 to this year, 2024. And the key thing on this, kind of a gotcha, a person, the one Eagle who had 14 is also one of the two that had it for the Cowboys. Anybody pop in your mind?
Yeah, Terrell Owens.
Correct. The other one for the Cowboys was Dez. Dez had 1 year where he had more. And
when you say more, how many numbers?
Been more than 13 touchdowns.
Okay.
Dez had it one time. Terrell Owens had it twice, once with Dallas, once with Philadelphia. But that just goes to show you, even in our division, nobody's in 60 years, there's only been 2 people in 60 years in our division that have done that. I looked at a few just randomly real quick. New England Patriots, all their Super Bowls won. Randy Moss.
But they've always been short on receivers, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
But I'm just saying, Buffalo Bills have 0.
Okay.
Right. I mean, Washington has, and I'll go back, and this is where kind of some numbers, I will admit, numbers don't always tell the entire story, right? I made this argument. I'm going to get to this. Santana Moss, he had 10 in DC the first year. Then he had 8 one more time than that, and that was his second high. And then he never had more than 6. But we think he was awesome. He's our guy, and it's not that he wasn't impactful; he just wasn't catching touchdowns.
Okay,
right. When this particular person came up for Hall of Fame, believe it or not, I argued that maybe he shouldn't get in the Hall of Fame. That was Art Monk. Art Monk only
should or should not be in the Hall of Fame.
I questioned whether he should be in the Hall of Fame. Okay. Art Monk caught 1 year only, caught 8 touchdowns. After all the years, he had a long career here in Washington. Other than that 1 year, he never caught more than 8 ever again, other than 1 year. I mean, again, you can start making arguments of, oh, they were run, it was a different time or whatever, but to get in the Hall of Fame, you're a dominating receiver. I mean, at the same time that he was there, you had people like Mark Clayton, right, catching 18. Jerry Rice catching more. So what I also did, again, I'm trying to reset here. I looked at the highest receivers every single year between now and when Ricky Sanders did in 88. That's 36 years. In 36 years, 12 times, if you caught 13 touchdowns, you would have been leading the NFL that year. So a third of the time, 13, you led the NFL, right?
Okay.
And my point on that is 13 is not that's a big number, right? A third of the time with 13, you're leading the NFL in receptions. The all-time leader in one season, people may or may not know, is Randy Moss. He caught 23. We see the year that Terry's having. He caught 23 in 1 year. And then even when you throw on top of that, there was 4 different tight ends that led the league in touchdowns. Most recently was Jimmy Graham. Gronk did it one time. Vernon Davis did. And then Sterling Sharp did twice. And Sterling Sharp, for some reason, isn't in the Hall of Fame. Right.
Okay.
And for those that didn't know, Sterling Sharp was dominant. I don't know. That is one person when I look at people that have not made it into the NFL Hall of Fame, he is one that absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Um,
Well, was that it, or you
well,
got more?
and I would say the last 2 years. Let me see. So last year the league, the high for last year was 13. Also, the year before
Okay.
that was 14. So that's in the 17 game era, and you're still right there. I guess again, my point that I was just that 13 is a higher number in the NFL than what we think it is. If you get 13 every single year, heck, if you get 10 to 13 every single year, you're probably going to the Hall of Fame.
That's fair. Okay. So I'll say this then. So the numbers are a little surprising to hear you say. Good data, good research, good job. Um, so this is kind of twofold. I will say I'm a little surprised to hear these numbers, to hear just how few players have surpassed the 13 touchdown reception mark over the last 60 years, right? That is still surprising. Um, and especially given that over these years, we have seen some very, very dominant Hall of Fame type receivers, whether it's tight end or wide receiver, catching a lot of balls. And we're like, man, these guys are just killing it. And
Right.
yet, at the end of the day, they're not surpassing 13 touchdowns. So I will give you that Terry's achievement. I never tried to minimize Terry's achievement because I was happy for him. I just thought that more people surpassed the 13 reception touchdown mark. That being said, given that we're in a passing league, given the production that a lot of these guys have, and the fact they play 17 games, a guy making 20 million, and the guys that we're talking about, the Jeffersons, the Chases of the world, all guys that we consider your Pro Bowl, all pro wide receivers, I would expect that these guys are catching at least a touchdown a game. So I'm still going to stand by the fact that I think 13 isn't a huge number. If you're comparing it to the history and the data, it's right on par with the elite season.
Right.
But to expect Terry to get one reception touchdown, even if he gets 5 catches, to expect Terry, Jamar, Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, you name it. You go down the list of receivers, Stephon Diggs, all of these guys that we're paying the big bucks to, I would expect those guys to be at least get in the end zone almost every game. Now, realistically, that's not going to happen. But when we play a game, we always talk, you got to get Terry the ball. You expect Terry to get a touchdown. I'm
Right.
pretty sure Minnesota, you got to get Justin Jefferson the ball. You expect him to get a touchdown. The Cowboys, they expect CeeDee Lamb to get a touchdown. You're going to expect every top wide receiver on your team, your 1A receiver, to get in the end zone. So again, I will still stand by that I think 13 seems to be a very low number. But when you compare it to the data, which you have done a good job of proving, then 13 is on par with with what is considered a really great season. And that in and of itself is a little surprising to me.
Yeah. And I understand that, initially looking into it, because I don't know that at quick thinking about it, I would have thought that the number would have been a little bit higher. Only 11 people. I'm only showing 11, the high over that same time frame of being 17 or higher was only 11.
Okay.
And some of those people are, somebody like Randy Moss had two of those. Jerry Rice, I think, had two of them as well. So it's not even 11 people; it's 11 different times.
Times. Okay.
More likely, more like 8 people.
Okay.
And when you're playing fantasy football, those people stand out even head and shoulders more
Right.
because they're getting the yards and the touchdowns for
Right.
those that are big fantasy football players. But yeah, it was just kind of like I said, I was even surprised a little bit. I thought Santana Moss had more touchdowns per year that he had. Like I said, he had 10 in 2005, the very first year he was traded from New York to Washington. And then after that, it was 6, 4, 6, 3, 6,
Well, it
4.
just goes to show you that what we consider top productive receivers doesn't equate to touchdowns, clearly. All right. All right. It just, yeah. But I don't want to.
And it's mixed, right? And then you have people, and I'm not saying that he was a bum by any means, but you had Chris Carter, who's Mr. Touchdown. Right?
Right.
There's people that had a whole lot more yards than he did during his playing time. During the exact same years, somebody might have 3, 4, 500 more yards, but he would have 3 or 4 more touchdowns because he was Mr. Touchdown in the red zone.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, good job. So let's give me a bump, because we want to give the folks what they're here for. And that is Wildcard Weekend. And Ken, we are a part of Wildcard Weekend once again. The last time we participated in this particular big weekend was 2020. And ironically, it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Right. The last time we won a playoff game as a franchise, was 2005.
Against?
You want to guess who we played?
I know.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Tampa Bay
somehow
Buccaneers.
When it comes to uh, when it comes to playoff football, we seem to run into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Okay. And so again, this is a weekend we've been a part of. Happy to be back and be a part of it again. And we play in prime time, which is
we do.
a big part of this deal. But I will say we won that playoff game in 2005, and we lost it the last time we played them in 2020. And the Bucs went on to win the Super Bowl. And for those that may have forgotten, that was the year 1 of Tom Brady. And when they won
in Tampa,
they won the second team, I think, to have won a Super Bowl on their home field.
Yep.
And so we're part of Wildcard Weekend, man. Excited.
Yeah, it's funny because both of those games. When I think of both those games, the 2005 game was a Sean Taylor moment, right?
Right.
Scooping up a ball and taking it to the house for a touchdown, and then if you watched the game with Washington against the Buccaneers and Tom Brady, there's only one play that you remember from the game, right? That's Heineke diving for the
one play
pylon.
for who? One play
What's
that
that?
who remembers? The Washington fans?
Oh, Tampa Bay fans still remember that. That was a crazy play. You've seen highlights on it. People walking around town with T-shirts made on it. I mean that play and how he played in the game is why he's still in the league today, right? 2 or 3 weeks earlier, he was sleeping on his sister's couch, getting ready to go back for his masters, and now he's still in the NFL as a backup. but
He looked like
that game is why Taylor Heineke is still in the NFL today.
well, he became a folk hero for you. Let me just say that.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna go ahead and say yes.
I'm
I
going
know
to
you're
say yes too.
exaggerating a little bit there, but I'm gonna go ahead and go with it. Taylor Heineke will always have a spot in my heart. Not a big one, not a real big one, but he's got a
Yeah.
little, you know.
Okay. Well, he was your guy. We all know he
He's at
was
the
your guy.
top of the bleachers. He's top of the bleachers off to the corner. He doesn't have front row, but he's got a seat.
Uh, yeah. So, but again, what's interesting with this is again we have played the Bucks. I want to say maybe about 4 times in the playoff over the years here, and we've not bested them very many times. Again, as I pointed out, the last time was 2005. But what's very interesting is we opened the season on the road, week 1, playing the Buccaneers, and it
Yep.
was again we mentioned it last time briefly on our podcast that it was the first game for the entire franchise, meaning the new regime in terms of the franchise. It was, I know Josh Harris and his crew had taken over the previous year, but that was the final year of Ron Rivera. But it was the first year with Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and the rookie quarterback, number 2 pick in the draft, Jayden Daniels, right? And there was a ton of question marks on what was going to take place and how this season was going to unfold. And we lost the game. I
Yep.
think I think many people felt that we would lose that game. Um, but Jayden didn't look too bad. The moment didn't look too big for Jayden. Um, it what's interesting also from that game is who our starting corners were against Tampa. So from a defensive standpoint, we didn't do too well. We got some pressure on Baker, but it was one of those. It reminded me of the Chase Young slash Montez Sweat years where they would get pressure on the quarterback but could never get him on the ground.
Right.
And so they wrapped up. I think if they had completed the tackle on Baker Mayfield, they probably would have had 5 sacks on him.
Right.
But in each time, he was able to break the tackle, use his legs, extend drives, and it was essentially a glimpse in what the defense was going to do all year. Although they got better as the course of the year went on, but some of the things that ailed us in week 1 still ails us at the end throughout the season. But having St. Juice and Emmanuel Forbes as our starting corners, this time we have Marshawn Lattimore and the sensational rookie Mike Sanders-Steele. So that's going to be one difference. They are also missing Godwin, their second star receiver, but they do have a rookie over there, and I forgot his name, who has played extremely well, opposite of the future Hall of Famer Mike Evans. So it's going to be a huge matchup for us defensively.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm sure you remember you and I had a conversation in somewhere around I'm gonna say week 7, 8, 9,
Mm-hmm.
and I made the comment at the time as we were going over our wins and losses and where we were improving. Right at that point, we were looking good. And I said, man, Tampa Bay wouldn't want to catch us now, right?
Right.
And that was probably true. Well, Tampa Bay is going to catch us, and that you mentioned about Jaden's first game. This isn't the same Jaden that they faced. He's been in the offense now for what literally 17 games. The offense is much more wide open. There was a lot of check down. I think when I even did the math and I forget the numbers, but I looked and I think like 90% of his passes were all within like 7 yards. It was
Right.
little quick slants, quick outs to the backs. It was to make a rookie quarterback comfortable, and it was successful. And the offense moved the ball, and they had some success. But the offense is more explosive now. I think our running game right now overall, not counting Jaden, I'm talking from a running back perspective. A running game probably is not quite as good as what it was the
It's
first
awful.
5 or 7 weeks.
It's
Um,
awful.
yeah, that's one thing that's taken a step back. Um, but across the board, it's funny because when I look at, I guess I'm always the stats guy. Um, Offensively and defensively, Washington and Tampa are neck and neck. Neck and neck and good, neck and neck and bad. Defensively, Tampa is ranked 16th, middle of the pack. Uh, Washington is right behind him at number 18.
You mean
That's based off of
overall
points
defense?
overall,
Overall
right?
defense? Okay.
That number is based off of points, but yards. There's only less than 300 yards given up for the year difference, right? Um, Offensively, Washington is ranked number 5 from a points perspective in the NFL. Tampa Bay is number 3, right? Um, Again, yards wise, they have a little bit more yards, but numbers wise across the board is right there. They're doing it more through the air. Washington is doing more of the scoring itself. It is on the ground and in the air. Granted, Jaden is running a handful in, and then when we get down, we do a decent job of pounding the ball to get in, especially earlier in the year. But they have, I mean, Jaden's got 29 TD throws. Nice year, right? Solid year. Baker Mayfield has 41.
Yeah.
41 passing touchdowns. Now he has twice as many interceptions also, but they're throwing the ball this year. They're not, they used to be a lot more run, and you would think with the team that they have, they would still focus on the run more, but they're a pass happy team right now.
Well, certainly, I think I know myself, and I'm going to assume some other fans here. We recognize that there's a good Baker Mayfield and there's a bad Baker Mayfield, and we're hoping that we get bad Baker Mayfield, who's the gunslinger, shades of Brett Favre, willing to take chances and even put the ball in harm's way. And just like I said, we had St. Juice and Emmanuel Forbes as the starters last time he played us, and I'm hoping that these same chances, you got a much more experienced rookie in Sam Steele and the savvy Pro Bowl vet in Marshawn Lattimore. He was a full participant in practice, so he should be playing on this game. And there's a long, long history between Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore from Marshawn's days in New Orleans, where they played twice a year. You can go back and just Google if you like and see the matchup. Man, these guys do not like each other. I'm talking come to blows, fist fighting on the field, right? Getting
Right.
ejected. I mean, there's some bad blood here. But the thing about it is, Marshawn Lattimore is one of those guys that tends to defend Mike Evans really, really well. The only thing that I hope that happens on Sunday, specifically with that matchup, is that Marshawn is able to keep his wits about him and keep his emotions in check. Because although we score some points, we can't be allowing Tampa to keep drives alive because you're getting personal fouls, right? Don't let Mike Evans get in your head and cause you to get out of character and do some things, because unlike the regular season, there's no next week. You can't make the corrections and the adjustments next week if you lose this game. This is
Right.
a one and done tournament, and you got to be able to play your best and get it done and come out with the win. But you made mention here, and I'm going to pull up my numbers here. But you made mention of Washington's run game, and I said it was awful. You said it's not been great, and I said it's
I'm
been
being
awful
kind.
because I don't.
I'm
You were being kind.
I'm being kid gloves here. Yes, when I said that,
Well, I'm not, because I'm gonna tell you it's
that's
been
fine.
trash. It's been trash because maybe you don't realize just how bad it's been, Ken. I'm gonna throw some numbers here. Just walk with me. So 6 weeks ago, our last loss was against Dallas, and we know how that went. That was our Dallas comes to Washington with Cooper Rush, and we all thought that we were going to win that game, and we lost that game. We did not play well. Cowboys put it on us. And since that game, Washington goes on a 5-game win streak. Okay?
Yep.
During that 5-game win streak, it started with a bounce back game against the Tennessee Titans. Washington won that game 42-19. And in that game, we were extremely excited because of not only the score, but it was like, where was this last week when we played the Cowboys? But Brian Robinson, specifically in the run game, rushed the ball 16 times for 103 yards and a touchdown. Chris Rodriguez also had a big game. He rushed 13 times for 94 yards. So we almost had 2 100-yard rushers in that game. He also scored a touchdown. Doesn't include Jayden. I'm only want to talk about our running backs.
Right.
That was our last sightings from our running backs. Because then the consequent 4 weeks after that, we played the Saints. We won the game 20-19, barely. And I think it's because we stopped the 2-point conversion or something.
Right. Yep.
Outside of Jayden Daniels, Brian Robinson rushed the ball 21 times, 65 yards. No touchdowns. The following week, we play Philly. 33-36, Washington wins. Brian Robinson, 10 carries for 24 yards, no touchdowns. Then we had the primetime game against the Atlanta Falcons. We won that game 30-24 in overtime. Brian Robinson, 13 carries, 60 yards, no touchdowns. And then last week, our final game against the season, we played the Cowboys. We won the game 23-19. Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler combined 8 carries for 22 yards, no touchdowns. And the other games that I mentioned with Brian Robinson against the Saints, Philly, and Atlanta, excluding Jayden Daniels, Brian Robinson was the leading rusher. He had 65 yards, 24 yards, 60 yards. Didn't see the end zone. So when you say the running game has been a little bit suspect, no, bro, it's not even there. So therefore, you had Jayden Daniels having to pass the ball and also use his legs to complement the running game or offset the lack of run game by our running backs. And that is a problem. Because one thing that you and I know, and any fan of this team knows, because you watch the games, as our running game goes, so does our offense. Because one is we stay ahead of the chains, so therefore we in second and third and short. The playbook now opens up. You don't know if it's an RPO. You don't know if it's a pass. You don't know if it's the option play. You don't know because we're in third and short. But when the running game is not there, we find ourselves in second and long and sometimes third and long. And then you end up with scores like 23-19, 20-19. We can't expect Jayden, man, to come out here against a good team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a solid defense like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and an experienced head coach / defensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Todd Bowles, because he's going to see us a second time just like we're going to see them. But the run game has to come back, man. It has to come back. Because I don't have the confidence that offensively we can do it all just being one-dimensional in this game.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think in the playoffs, especially the first 3 quarters, when you get down to the last 5 or 7 minutes, anything can happen at that point. I need everybody to be able to do something. If Jayden takes over the last 5 or 7 minutes and runs more, I'm fine with that. But the first 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, you got to have a running game in the playoffs. You just do. Right. You need to be multi-dimensional. And I mentioned it. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast, but I know I talked to you. If it wasn't on the podcast, it was while we were at the bar. Brian Robinson doesn't seem to have that drive that he did the first half of the year. He was the first half of the year he was getting hit, and he would carry somebody for 2 yards, 3 yards, sometimes 4 or 5 yards. Now it's like he's almost, I don't know if he's standing up, but he gets hit at the line and he gets stopped. Um,
Right.
and he's not driving. He's the again. I know some of it is the blocking. Don't get me wrong. But there was times where he would get hit at the line and still pick up a yard and a half. Where now he gets hit and gets nothing. Um, and it's just an observation that I've seen. Last week, Eckler came back and not much of an impact. Again, I don't know if it's him. I know he's coming out of concussion protocol, but he didn't really catch anything out of the backfield very much. Um, and I'm comparing both of them to the first half of the year when Eckler got here and we're like, that's what a third down back should be compared to Antonio Gibson that we'd had for a few years, right?
Right.
Where's that player? Whether it's the player, whether it's the scheme that we're running, where is that guy? Where's the bruiser in B Rob? We're not seeing it very much. And I don't know if it's something they're going to be able to turn on and turn off, but it needs to be improved, at least improved in the playoffs if you want to get past the wild card weekend.
Yeah. I think the run game issue, and when I discuss the run game, I'm excluding James Daniels. Okay.
Correct.
Um, I think the run game issue is multi-layered. I think there's something to the attrition that and the hits that mounts on our running backs throughout the season. Right. I do think that's part of it. Um, it's been very clear on this podcast that your boy does not like the cold weather. I can't imagine out there in third-degree weather trying to run a football and guys are coming in with their helmets down and just cracking you as a running back, right? I get it. It's part of the game, but there's something when they say it's December football because it changes. But that
Right.
being the case, I think the attrition of the football season, the long season, affects our running game. I think there's also we've had some injuries on the offensive line throughout the season. Even though some guys have played, they're not healthy. And I get that you can make the argument that every team is banged up and not fully healthy. But given the young team that we are and the team that just come off a 4-win season last year, I don't think we have as much room for error as some teams. And so when you have your right tackles out, your left tackle gets banged up. Our backup swing tackle, Cornelius Lucas, gets banged up. Then our center, Tyler Biotish, who I think, is the unsung hero of our offensive line because it truly looks different offensively when he's out. He was out last week. He's been banged up. He's missed a few games. And then when he did come back and play, how healthy was he? And so I think that changes. And so with the offensive line being a little bit in flux and not 100% healthy, I think it's affecting their blocking. I think they're not able to open the holes like they were doing early in the season. I think the defense that we're playing is pushing the line of scrimmage back. And so by the time our running backs are getting the ball, there's probably someone already in the backfield. So I think it's multi-layered. So the holes may not be there, and our running backs are just a little banged up.
Right.
Um, Austin Eckler got his bell rung, right? I mean, I know
Yes.
that's an old school phrase, but he got his bell rung when he played the Cowboys several weeks ago and went on the IR. So I don't know his history, his career, and the history of his career when he played for the Chargers. Was that his first concussion? Maybe not, but was that his first major concussion? Perhaps. I mean, the guy was put on IR. I mean, it was kind of like whatever it was and whatever they saw after his scans, it was like, you're not playing next week.
Right.
We're going to sit you down for at least 4 weeks. So was he a little gun shy last week returning to the field? I don't know. But to your point, he didn't look quite the same. But neither did Jayden when he came back from the rib injury. And you've got a guy who might be a little timid running the ball and the offensive line not opening the holes. You see what you saw in his first game back from the IR. And I'm kind of glad that he came back a week before we actually need him in the big game, because that game against the Cowboys this past Sunday was a want, meaning wanting to win and secure the 6th seed, but it wasn't a need that we needed
Right.
to win it in order to get in the playoffs. So maybe it was just a little bit to knock the rust off a little bit. But I'm hoping that his return a week early would be the thing that he needs to run a little bit harder and a little bit better this week when we play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think, our passing game is, it's hard to pinpoint our passing game, right? Terry disappears, but then all of a sudden, when you need him most, all of a sudden it's like they pull him out of the blue tent. Like, all right, Terry, we need you. And then he comes in, and at whatever point of the game, all of a sudden he starts making these big crazy plays. But Oz is doing well.
Oz.
Yeah, that's not what you call him. Call him OZ. You call him Oz.
I think only you and Cliff called him Oz. Did you hear Cliff's soundbite?
I did not.
You did not. Well, I'm gonna get for the listeners who didn't hear this, and Ken, they asked Cliff Kingsbury about using air quotes Oz this week, and he went on to say that when he got here, he saw on the sheet Oz. So he's been calling this man Oz for many, many, many weeks. And to somebody finally told him that it's OZ, not Oz. And Cliff said, and I quote, "That was the whitest thing I could have done."
Well, then I'm. You saying I'm representing? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying that you and Cliff.
I can accept it. OZ, hey. Oz. But I recognize, hey, you can call it whatever you want. I'm you know what?
That's not his man's name. His name everyone calls him OZ, Ken, not Oz. Okay.
I just shorten it up. Why go with 2 syllables OZ when you can do 1 syllable Oz?
Well, I guess if you want to be like Cliff and do the white thing, you can call him Oz. I guess I'm just
trying
saying
to do anything. I'm just doing what I do. If I thought if he told me that it's OZ, even after I was making the mistake, I would go, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'll call you whatever you want. But anyway,
I think you would still call him Oz. Something tells me you would still call that man Oz, even though he told you.
I'm going to continue. I am going to continue because, you got to count on the Oz, right? Man. The man, okay. He's the man behind the curtain.
Didn't mean to get sidetracked. I'm just letting you know that everyone calls him OZ, not Oz.
I'm just going to call him the Wizard. Is that better? The Wizard of Oz?
Hey, you can do it, man.
All right. But with him all of a sudden stepping up his game, he was almost not even part of the consideration week 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. All of a sudden you started having some injuries and people not producing De'Ami Brown. And he got more and more playing time. And the more playing time he's gotten, to his credit, he's been there. He's got a connection with Jaden, and the team has a comfort level with him, and he's been producing. Ertz is doing what he does. He's not going to beat anybody downfield, but he's going to pick up those 5 yard, 7 yard, 15 yard the expertise that he has at reading defenses and going to the open spot, especially if it's a zone defense. He's ready to eat him up on that. So from a wide receiver passing game perspective, I think Washington's going to be okay. I don't necessarily sitting here saying we're going to be productive, but I think we'll be able to move the ball without much problem. This year again, I mean, this is a year, a few years in a row where we don't hit the home run on passes. We did a few times, early on. De'Ami Brown caught one right before going into halftime, a big catch against the Browns. Terry's got 1 or 2, but overall we don't hit the 35 plus yard touchdown. And it'd be nice to get one this year. And Jaden still has not broken one, right? I don't know that he will. Maybe he won't. Where he makes a move and does a fake and goes to the left or goes to the right, and it becomes a foot race. People always are, there's a safety always back there, whatever that can run him down or cut him off. One time he's going to break loose. He's fast enough to do it if he can get it to where somebody doesn't have an angle on him. But maybe this is the week. I don't want him. Look, I don't want him running 10, 12 times. So a pass play breaks down and he runs 3 or 4 times and 2 design plays. Okay, that's 6 for the day. I can live with that.
Okay. All right. Well, that being said, man, I think it's that time.
I'm going to go ahead and try and play the music, but as we know, we've been having some problems. So, Reggie, you just give me the signal and I will stop the music. Not coming through well. What's your name? What's your number? This is where we give our confidence level of how we think we're going to come out on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 obviously is a guaranteed lock, which I don't think Reggie and I will ever do again after we got burned on that. But there might be a 9.9 somewhere down the road in the future. But Reggie, how you feeling about this game here?
How I'm feeling about this game. Okay. I'll say this, man. I'll give you an interesting stat here, man. First of all, let me just say this. Going into this game, I touched on it a little bit already. The run game has to show up and be a part of the game. They have to return to half the form. Even if it's half of what they used to be, it is a must that the run game comes back, and it has to come back in a big way this week. Okay. The other big part that needs to, in this case, not be a part of this game, and that is penalties. We've been killing each other. We've been killing ourselves with penalties. And when you're playing lesser teams, we've been able to overcome some of this, but these are some good teams, and Washington can't afford, because again, this is a win. This is a one and done type of scenario. If you screw this up, there's no we'll fix it next week. That's not how this works. So again, with penalties being part of the game, we can't afford to do that, because again, Washington over the course of this season, my stat here is Washington went 1-4 against the good teams. Good teams are your playoff bound teams. And Washington went 1-4. Those 4 teams: Tampa, week 1, the Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the first game against the Philadelphia Eagles. The one game we won was against our second matchup against the Eagles, and that was when Jalen Hurts went out in the first quarter. Had Jalen Hurts not gone out, we don't know, but had he not gone out, because prior to that, they was playing pretty good. So the one win we get was against the Eagles. That being said, Washington is 3-0, Ken, against teams that they went in on the rematch. And what they mean by that is we beat the Giants in the rematch, we beat the Cowboys in the rematch, and we beat Philly in the rematch. Guess what? We get our 4th team this week in a rematch. So can Washington make it 4-0 in the rematch bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And with that being said, Ken, it breaks my heart, but I don't think we get it done. I don't think we get it done against Tampa. I'm not going to sit here and predict the score. I think we're going to play well. I think we're going to look good. I think we're going to be, and it's going to be the narrative of, man, Washington's got a lot going on for them. And, man, they played hard. They got a stud in quarterback position and all that kind of stuff. But I don't feel good about this game. I just think the veteran, the experience, and the shortcomings of our team that has shown up late in the season, whether it's injuries, the fatigue of the year, just that we're playing a team that's just got better players on the other side, whether their defense is, player to a player is better. And I'm not so sure we get it done, because just like Washington is different from week 1, so is Tampa. So my confidence number that we win this game is probably a 4.
4. Okay. Okay. That's good explanation on how you got to that 4. I Most of what you said there, I don't disagree in your evaluation. Um, but I need to add to it. Uh, when I look at the teams, the Buccaneers started out hot, right? The first 4, 5, 6 games of the year, they were doing well. They're like, oh my goodness, this is. I think after week 3, 4, 5, they were talking. I know they were a little bit tongue in cheek, but they were saying, could Baker Mayfield be an actual candidate for MVP? And at that point
Right.
of the year, he probably was worthy of being in the conversation, right? It's still way early.
Mhm.
But when I look at the back half of the season, and I'll start out at October, the weekend of October 21st, they played the Ravens. So I look at and I start evaluating of who they beat and who they lost to, right? They lost to the Ravens, playoff contending team, right? They lost. Then they lost to the Falcons. Falcons didn't quite make it, but they were a playoff contending team. That's when Kurt was playing very, very well. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost to San Francisco. Oh, well, now they win a few, but who they beat? They beat the Giants. They beat Carolina Panthers. They beat the Raiders, right? Um, then they have a solid win against the Chargers. Then they lose to the Cowboys, right? And then their last 2 games is they beat the Carolina Panthers and they beat the Saints.
Okay.
So who do they beat? They beat and played competitively worse against a lot of those teams. Um, so when I say both teams have a lot of similarities, even the strength of schedule isn't terribly bad. They beat a lot of the bad teams, just like Washington did, and they struggled with some of the upper echelon teams, just like Washington did.
Okay.
Um, I think Washington can come out on a win with this. I think it's going to be close. It's going to go down to the wire, and maybe they come up short. But I've said it for a long, long, long time. The NFL across the board is about difference makers. And if you don't have a difference maker on your team, you don't stand a chance. Um, Jaden Daniels is a difference maker, right? Without a doubt. We've seen it time and time and time again. He's a difference maker, and I'm hopeful that Lattimore is enough of a difference maker to slow them down. We're not going to necessarily stop them. They've got a solid offense. Um, but if he can make Baker make some bad plays, because of coverage, he throws it into coverage when he shouldn't. Maybe he has to go to his second or third um, receiver, and you get sacked because of coverage. Some coverage sacks because of that. I think Washington can walk out with a win. I'm not overly excited. I know this is going to be a tough game. I'm going to give this a 6. And Reggie, I think this is game right here, being a playoff game. This is the biggest difference. This is a 2-point swing between your 4 and my 6. This might be the largest of the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, I could easily make the argument when you look at how the similarities of these teams. To your point, I looked at that, and the Buccaneers do not have a lot of signature wins. They beat up on the bad teams. But this has more, my number being a 4 has more to do with who we are. And who we are is a team that is winning in spite of. We're winning in spite of penalties. We're winning, and these can be good, positive things as well. But the nonetheless is at some point it catches up with you. We're winning despite of the penalties. We're winning in spite of the lack of run game. We're winning in spite of difference makers on both sides of the ball. We're winning in spite of it being a young team. We're winning in spite of not having marquee players, big names on both sides of the ball, and the ones we do have are in the twilight of their careers. So we're not looking great over these past few weeks. I mean, hell, we lost to Cooper Rush. We almost lost to Trey Lance. We needed overtime against. So it's more about what we're not doing and less about who Tampa is, because there are a lot of similarities between these teams in how they've gotten to this point.
Right.
Right. And so if we were like we beat Tennessee 42-19, and the way we were beating up on teams early in the season, if we were beating up on the Cowboys and the Saints and some of the teams that we played going into this matchup, I'm pretty sure my number will be a lot higher. But we've not looked good winning. We've pulled them out. There's been some resilience. And all of the things that you can hang your hat on, which has led to 12 wins. But boy, eventually it catches up, because every team in the playoff is like those 1-4, those 4 teams that we lost against in the regular season. And that is why I'm a little concerned about who we are and what we're going to bring to the table on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the things that you bring up are definitely valid points. And if there's anything that I think you hit home on the most that is concerning from a Washington perspective is the penalties, right? It's hard to get better during a season. That's normally a slow progression to get a little bit better. But you can stop penalties, right? These are habits. You weren't doing these same penalties earlier in the year. Once in a while there's a good penalty. Somebody's beat you and you're just trying to save your quarterback and you literally just grab them to save your quarterback. Those aren't the kind of penalties that we're really seeing. And we'll see what happens here. If Washington keep it at 5 or 6 penalties, and they're not, even those 5 or 6, if they're not back breaking penalties, I think Washington walks away with a win. If you're up at 10, 11, 13, like it, the last week or 2 or 3 have been, that it could definitely spell trouble.
Yeah. But I will be watching. I will be rooting. And I will be going into this thing expecting us to win, because I feel like every week, just about every week, I should say, that we have a chance to win, because we do have the difference maker at the quarterback position. So although my confidence doesn't reflect it, my excitement and my expectation going into this game is that we somehow just keep the magic rolling and we pull out a win. And the rookie of the year, or the presumptuous rookie of the year, Jake Daniels, just does his magic one more time, man, and we come out and we move on to the divisional round.
It would, I don't, I want to win the Super Bowl, but I think there's teams that are considerably better than us that are going to be in the Super Bowl and not Washington. But I think Washington can win this game, move to the next round, and we'll see how that game plays out. But we will see. We appreciate everybody listening. We will do a follow-up wrap-up on this game, win or lose, just like we always do. And we continue throughout the season. We'll talk about the playoffs. We'll start talking about the draft. We'll start talking about free agency. That'll keep on going. We've got some guests lined up that we'll be announcing and promoting here as well. And so it won't just be Knucklehead Ken and Knucklehead Reggie's voices and faces. We'll bring some fresh opinions in here as well. So you got anything else, Reg?
I don't, man. Good luck. Let's go, Commanders.
Let's go. Till next time. Peace out, Knuckleheads.
Peace out.